'cause I'm going down the road to a brand new place, and I'll get there with a smile on my face. Yeah, so lift me up. I'm moving on, singing and dancing while I play my song.
It didn't want to click. Well, hello to my backup plan tribe. How is everybody here today? My name is Tina Gim. I am an emergency preparedness coach. You have reached Talking Taboo with Tina, brought to you by your Backup Plan app. Well, what do we do here, guys? What do we do on our show? If you are new here, welcome. We bring you real, raw conversations with our listeners about their journey from a life-changing event in their life. And your backup plan brings you that. And what is your backup plan app, Tina? Well, it puts your life all in one place in case of any unpredictable circumstance while taking that painful aftermath out of the tragedy. What does that mean exactly? Well, it means that we are all going to die at some point. We are all going to get sick or disabled. We're going to get injured in a car accident or a work accident or whatever. We might lose everything in a tragedy or disaster. Look around the world in the last 2 years, what's been happening. It brought light to the condo collapse in Florida because people lost their lives, they lost their loved ones, and they lost their items, their home. It's just like Ukraine right now. What is that like? We're not Superman, everybody. We just aren't. We think we are Superman, especially men, but we're not. And Mike Tyson can't say it any better than everyone has a plan until you get punched in the face. And it's so true because we think we're prepared, but we're not. Has anyone ever been in a wildfire before? When something like that starts and you might get 5-minute evacuation notice, sometimes if you're lucky. And it's just like today when I brought on this special guest we have today from beautiful Virginia in the United States, who's an aspiring author writing a book on this whole situation, actually, who's a life coach. What I learned about losing your child to mental illness and addiction. And it's a huge, huge problem right now, especially in the United States and Canada. I don't know what it's like in the other countries, but I know there's overdose is humongous, growing problem. I know that addiction is a growing issue, and I know mental illness. And the problem with mental illness is I think we have all, at least I have, never thought that I would ever experience knowing a 17-year-old one day and the next day hearing he jumped off a cliff. It just brings this wow factor to your life. And that's why I was inspired to bring on Debbie Gail Zane here from Virginia to tell us, what she's gone through and tell us how that has affected her and her life. It's not just about the person, of course, as we know with celebrities. It happens so much with celebrities as well. And we're just unaware of it. Michael Jackson, Robin Williams have all struggled with mental illness. And it's crazy because there's never any rhyme or reason of who you are, what age you are, what celebrity status you are, who you are, if you're homeless or middle type of age group. It has no color factor to it. It is affecting everyone, everywhere. And I really thought it was important to bring her on and inspire us. So if you are new here, welcome to our show, and thank you for subscribing if you are a returning visitor. And I get my hand out because I'm going to tell you guys to subscribe and push that button down there in the corner. Make sure that you are going to find out where our next podcast and our YouTube channel shows are coming up. It's really, really important that you don't miss one. We have such cool people that come on our show. I'm so blessed to have going into my 3rd season already. Anyways, my name is Tina. I am an emergency preparedness coach, a best-selling author of In the Blink of an Eye. Just like that. It's how quick things happen in the blink of an eye. And I am a financial expert. I've been in the field for over 20 years, and I am an app developer of Your Backup Plan app. And I'm right here in Vancouver, BC. And I'd like to welcome all of you to our channel today and our repeat visitors as well. Because if you have found us today, you've found us for a reason. I really believe that. And please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. I'd be so very thankful. And I'd like to welcome our United States and our Canadian listeners, as well as, it keeps changing every week, but Germany is still 3rd. So I'd like to welcome our German listeners. Meine deutsche Freunde sind unseren Podcast willkommen. Wenn Sie Kommentare haben, können Sie gern Fragen stellen. Also danke für deine Freundschaft und danke fürs Zuhören, meine deutsche Freunde. So thank you so much, my German listeners. Now, Italy has just beat Ireland in our podcast. So welcome to Italy as well. Welcome to Ireland, and welcome to the UK and Australia. Welcome everyone, because we welcome all of you. Nothing is different anywhere around the world. We all have these tragedies happen, no matter where you are. Isn't that the truth right now with the Ukraine invasion? So welcome aboard. Our show today is absolutely going to be killer, because it's really going to pinpoint what's happening out there with addiction and mental illness. And I'd like to welcome Debbie Gail coming on today to our show. Welcome, Debbie.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Oh, no problem. And Debbie is from Virginia. She's a life coach and, of course, a beautiful mom. And she's writing a book. I don't know the name of it. She probably might share it with us. We'll get the tips and secrets of it. She has 3 children, and Alex being one of them that we're going to talk about today, of course. And I think your book is going to be amazing, Debbie. I really, really do. And where did all of this tragedy start for you?
Yeah, it actually started when my son Alex, who is my oldest child, like you said, I have 3, 9 years ago, when he was age 17, he was diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder, which is it's a really serious mental illness. For a lot of people who maybe haven't heard of it, it's kind of a cross between bipolar and schizophrenia. So it was kind of our lives were changed that time when he was 17. And he was in the hospital for a month when he was first diagnosed, and after that it was a lot of going in and out of hospitals for him, finding doctors, trying different medications for him, trying to battle his symptoms. And
what do you think the problem is, Debbie? What do you think it is the difficulty? Is it the actual diagnosis, or is it finding the best plan? Is that what is difficult about it?
I think finding the best plan. I think you really hit it on the head there, and I was told this in the hospital when he was there for all that time. They took their time with the diagnosis, which is why they kept him for so long. And they had a lot of meetings with me. And I remember the doctor saying that It's really hard to find the right combination of medications for him. And if you're lucky to, they end up going off of them anyway. And so it's kind of this battle, and she really hit it on the
And why
head.
do they come off of it?
I think a couple of reasons. I think one of the reasons is when they start to feel better, they think, why do I need this anymore? And then the other reason is they don't like the side effects. So,
Oh,
my son was on 3 medications to control all the symptoms. And we were lucky enough to find a pretty good combination, but over that 9 years, we were always battling. He was always going off of it. It was really hard. So I think that is more of the struggle is finding the right help and having them buy into it. Because especially when he was 17, he really didn't want to take the meds. And then when he was 18, it was like, oh, I'm 18, I don't have to take them. And it was always this struggle. And so as a mom, to be able to support and love him
yeah.
and still have that connection and that good relationship with him, but to also be a parent and to also, let him know what, is what he, what might help him, what resources are there, what doctors are there. And I remember thinking when he first left the hospital the first time, I remember thinking, okay, I'm on this mission to find the best doctors for him that are going to, so that he can have the best life possible, so that he can have a more normal life. And honestly, and I spent a lot of time interviewing doctors, and I found some really great ones for him, but it all came down to it wasn't what he wanted for himself. It wasn't, he didn't want to spend the time going to a psychiatrist or talking to a therapist. It wasn't until he was so much older, probably in the last few years of his life, that he found help on and off on his own. When he was younger, it was more like, okay, I'm supposed to do this, but I'm not really buying into it. And that's hard. It's hard to love and support them
It's
when
it's
it's not what
almost
they
like
want.
it's almost like it sounds very similar to like when you have a parent that gets dementia. They kind of know that they have it because they're struggling with certain things, but they don't want to think that they have it. So maybe
Yeah,
that's kind of the similar kind of thing. They don't want to think that they have this.
it is. You hit it again. So
Oh,
it's like
gee, I'm
there
doing
was
all right today.
I want to, yeah, I want to say the first, it's hard to pinpoint the exact number of years, but at least the first, gosh, until his early 20s, at least, he had a lot of denial around it. So, so sometimes when he would be back in the hospital, for example, he would ask for a he would ask to be reevaluated. Like maybe he has something different. Maybe it's not this. And he would tell me out of the hospital, he would say, Mom, they said I had this, but I don't think I do.
Oh,
So there was a lot of denial. And I don't know exactly what age it kind of where he would
they
talk
realize.
about it. Early 20s, definitely early 20s, where he realized, and he would talk about it, and he would say, Mom, I know I have this. I've got the schizoaffective. I know I've got to take the meds. I mean, he eventually knew he had to take the meds. That didn't make him stay on it, though. He'd still, when he'd call me up in the later years and he'd start to talk about some of his symptoms, I'd know exactly which of the 3 meds he was off of. And I would say, Did you
Oh,
stop taking this one? And he would always go back on it. He wasn't as opposed to it. It was more like he ran out, or he didn't make it back to the doctor to get a refill,
or you
or
didn't think you really needed it, so you're gonna
yeah,
just see.
yeah, right, exactly. And I know he had side effects from the medicine, and I really felt bad for him. I mean, in the early years, especially trying to adjust the meds and get them right, a lot of them made him really tired. And I
Yeah.
know he complained of not feeling like himself. and it's hard to say. I think the mental illness must have also made him not feel like himself too.
Oh, I'm
Um,
sure.
yeah,
It must be a real struggle, like I said, because I know that dementia patients actually know. Like they really, really know. But
yeah,
it doesn't appear like they know
right.
on
It's
the
like
outside.
because they probably just feel different in their body. Like I know he felt different. Because I mean, once I started, even before he passed away, something made me just almost like mourn the loss of who he was before his mental illness. And he was really a normal child and teenager until 17. And he used to play sports. He loved soccer. He was so passionate about it. I remember taking him to tryouts for travel soccer, and each year he wanted to be on a different team, and we'd be doing all these tryouts all the time. And then he got into track and cross country in high school, and I went to all his meets, and it was exciting. And he was such a different person. And so I actually was like going through a period where all of his childhood memories were just flooding back. And I didn't know he was going to die. This was only a few months before he died. I was grieving the loss of who he was before the mental illness, and before the addiction. So that's the other thing is, oh, you were going to ask me a question.
When did the addiction start then, Debbie? Like did it go
I
hand in hand, or
it
like
it
for
did.
parents to know?
Yeah, it did. So what I found out when he was first hospitalized is at that point he had admitted to using marijuana. So there wasn't really an addiction, but there was a
I
going in
use
that direction. So there was marijuana at that point, and I remember them saying they had a dual diagnosis program, which would deal with the drug use and deal with the mental illness. Um, and I guess he admitted to using marijuana, I want to say maybe like within a year prior to going into the hospital and getting diagnosed. Um, and then I think over the next year, it gradually increased to other drugs. And so marijuana was only the beginning. And, you know, it became over the years,
Was it
it
use of
became
his
more and
own,
more.
or was it used socially, like with his friends? Like was it a thing that you
So it
is that
was
how
both.
they Oh,
It
okay.
was it was both. I think he was self-medicating. So because I know that there can be like the peer pressure type of a thing for let's go out and use that. And I honestly think just from knowing him so well and how close we were and how open he was with me, I think that in his case, a lot of it was the self-medication. So there wasn't always another person involved.
Right.
And I know in his later years, in his 20s, a lot of the drug use, I mean, he would usually rent a room, and he spent some time in like living in Oxford houses, which are like halfway houses, but he also rented rooms, just like a room in a basement and stuff. And so a lot of times he was doing the drugs by himself. There were some times he got to know we called them, his sister, brother, and I called them drug friends. And so there were times when he did this with other people, but um, I think that there were definitely a lot of times it was by himself, and even early on in his teens, I mean, I think it was his way of coping, and he did learn other coping skills in the hospital. Each time he would go to outpatient programs. When he would get discharged from the hospital, he would be in different programs. He also there was a year where he was in rehab 3 different times a year. And when he would come out, they would recommend he go into a program. And he did learn coping skills. One of his was walking. I mean, he would literally,
Oh,
some days he'd walk for miles, hours. He'd walk so much with his little headphones, listening to music. And I mean, I know he tried, um, but I think life was really hard. He also had type 1 diabetes, which came like
wow.
almost a month or two after the hospitalization where he was diagnosed. And then he also had a seizure disorder. So he had epilepsy.
Oh. Oh,
Um,
jeez.
and that was worsened by the drugs. So that was something where he was basically having seizures every week, sometimes more than one a week. So he didn't drive, so he walked everywhere. So he literally walked. He walked so much. I mean, like I said earlier in his life, he ran track and cross country, so he did love walking, but that was probably his biggest coping skill. But it
Oh,
wasn't enough. I think it just wasn't enough for him to deal with all of the things he had going on with the seizures, the diabetes, the drugs, the mental illness. I mean, he just, for such a young person, he
was it
had,
alcohol too?
he did. And I would say the alcohol came more in his later years. It's interesting because I feel like earlier in his teens, in the early 20s, it was more the drugs. And then as time went on, the alcohol got added in. But there were times where I can remember. I mean, there was a time where when he still lived with me, I remember coming out of the house. I was living in a townhouse. I was on an end unit, and I got in my car and I pulled out of my spot and I went to go around the side of the house, and he was lying there face down in like on the side of the hill. And so of course I got out, and he was unconscious and bleeding. And so it turned out, he had been drinking. There was alcohol in the backpack and everything. And so there was alcohol from time to time, but I would have to say that probably the biggest problem was the drugs. Was the drugs. It was,
Affecting, because it's almost like a counteract to your medication, right?
it definitely interfered with the medications. I think it not only interfered with their effectiveness, I think it interfered with him remembering to take the meds or desiring to take the meds.
Right.
And so it was definitely a big problem. I mean, the third time that he was in rehab was the year that he was 19 years old, and I think he was turning 20. And the third rehab recommended, they said, most of the people that go back that are his age, that go back into the same home environment with the parent there, fall back and relapse. And they said, have you ever thought about him going to an Oxford house? Which in this country, Oxford House was started basically by a senator in the 80s, and they named it an Oxford house, and it was modeled after a halfway house. And so
Oh,
it's basically a group home. They'll have men's ones and they'll have women's ones, and it's a sobriety home. So everybody living there has to stay off drugs and alcohol, and they have to get a job, and they have to go to meetings. So they
but they'll
have to go to
support you, obviously. I guess that's the big thing.
they're very supportive. It's a like environment, so it's everybody there for the common goal. And so that was suggested to us, and I actually remembered his prior rehab counselor recommending it, and I called that person to talk it over because we knew him better. And so ultimately I decided that I think this is what we need to do because it's not working when he comes back home. And that was one of the hardest things in my journey when he was living that I had to do, was to tell him he can't come home, because he didn't want to go to the Oxford house.
Oh
He wanted to
gosh.
come home, and that was so hard to
It's
do that.
it kind of reminds me of Amy Winehouse. I mean, she wrote a song about it.
Yeah, yeah. It's really it was really sad, and it really it was, because I was so close with my son all the time, and to tell your son he can't come home, but knowing that it was for his benefit, because I didn't want him relapsing and overdosing. And I mean, I, it was so hard. I remember after I dropped him off, I picked him up from the rehab. We went home to pack his stuff. And when I, helped him unpack at the Oxford house and I left, I cried the whole way home. I mean, it was so hard.
I think it's similar to having to put a parent or a family or friend into a home.
Yeah,
For some people, it's feels like you're not helping. You're giving up kind of feeling.
I think that's exactly it's really hard, especially if they don't want to go. I think, if he had said, "Oh, this is a great idea, Mom," then it wouldn't have felt so hard. But
Yeah, yeah.
it was telling him he couldn't come back home was so hard. I mean, and that was pretty much the beginning of him living away from home, and he was almost 20 at that time. And unfortunately, that wasn't the be all and end all of the
Oh,
drug use. But it was interesting because I remember shortly after he got there and made a few friends in the home, one of the friends that was his same age moved back home. And within a couple days after that person moved back home, they overdosed and died. And his mom called the Oxford House to let the people know. And so my son told me, and that reinforced that I was making the right decision, Um, but
because they're not always
it
safe
was
at
not
home,
easy.
right? They're not safe at home either.
I think the thing is that what the counselor said is that they come back into this familiar atmosphere where mom is taking care of, or mom or dad or whoever is home is taking care of things, and they don't have to be responsible, and they don't have to be independent. They don't have to learn to take care of themselves. And so they tend to fall back and relapse. And so that's what I was told. So because so if you're a parent, this is the thing, is like
Yeah.
you can't make them do something, like I shared about the battle with the medications, is that, like, you cannot make them do something. You can, advise them, you can, be a role model, you can encourage, you
Support
can
them.
love them, you can support them,
Yeah.
but it's like you can't make them change. And so I couldn't make him stop using drugs, not by doing that either. It's just, and he did later come back home for about 6 months before he moved out again. And that 6 months was really, really difficult. His drug use escalated, and things really became unmanageable. And it was, there was some really big incidents. There was a time, I think twice, we almost lost him from drug overdoses. One time in particular, they had him in the ambulance right outside the home. They didn't even take him to the hospital right away because they were trying to revive him. And then they finally were able to, and they brought him to the hospital. But there were just a few different times where we almost lost him, and he was still in his teen. I guess he was around 20 then, maybe 21. And so after 6 months, then we helped him find another place, and
Yeah.
he pretty much had been, living outside of the home since then.
I think it's so hard because you see this up and down, like you see them get better, and then you think, oh, I see the light, so to speak, and then you see it fall again, and constant. And I don't know anybody personally, but I've had instances where I've known somebody dealing with this. And I find it interesting how it just this up and down. And, look at even the celebrities. How many times do they go in and out of rehab? I mean, Amy
Yeah.
Winehouse is like, no, don't let me go. I mean, I don't know what the answer is. Like, how do you break that cycle? I'm sure every parent would love to know that.
Yeah, so that was what happened to me in the beginning, where I'd get my hopes up every time he'd go into a treatment facility, either the hospital for his mental health and get a restart with his meds, or go into a rehab program, or, I would get my hopes up. I would be like, oh my gosh, this is going to work. Kind of like my original quest for finding the perfect doctor for him.
Yeah.
Is that there wasn't that. And so I had to be able to live my life and be happy, and not have it depend on these hopes going up and down. And so
Oh,
I did originally start a lot with I was in some support groups. I was in Al-Anon support group, and I actually got really involved in service with that. I was a group rep. I sponsored other people. I participated at conferences and different events. And so I kind of got into the serving others. And I also started my life coaching business about 4 years ago. And so for me, what happened is the reason my hopes would go kind of on and up and down is I realized I was looking for that certainty. And we don't have, there isn't certainty in life. um, there just isn't certainty about anything other than ourselves. You know, we can never be certain about another person or
Right.
an event. It's outside of our control. And so as a coach, I follow a lot of Tony Robbins, and he always says is if your top need is certainty, you're never going to be happy. And so what I ended up doing kind of through this service and serving others and helping others is substituting contribution for certainty. So it's like contributing to other people in a meaningful way, and that could be to my other two children, contributing to their lives too, because all my children are 20 months apart. So I had two others I was, doing things with, and contributing to others through the service in Al-Anon, contributing to other people that I worked with through my coaching business. So I got really into this serving others, helping others, and that helped myself
Yeah.
tremendously.
A lot of
Because
healing in
couldn't
that for you.
Yeah, yeah, and I couldn't attach to the certainty, because if I got attached to needing certainty, that's when fears crept in. So
Yes.
that's when, and it's like if I'm focusing on the fear, then I'm not focusing on the love. And so if I'm fearing everything that's going to happen with my son, then I'm not focusing on how I can love him and how we can have a loving relationship with him. And so rather than expending energy on something I have no control over, um, I chose to focus on things that I could do.
Yeah, because you'd feel like you're on a roller coaster.
Exactly.
And the problem I find with us, people in general, on the world, we want results, and we want to see results.
Yeah.
And we have to see it, physically see it, to recognize it and feel
Yeah.
it. But when we don't, we have fear. And
Yeah.
it's funny how our brain thinks like that, but I just know that it just seems like this repetitiveness of, like, even if he had have gotten better and gone 10 more years of thinking, I think it still can just relapse at some point. You just never know.
You really just never know. And that's the one thing I learned when I was in the Al-Anon program. I did learn, because they would encourage us to go to open meetings for like AA or NA. And when I would hear them speak, even people who had 20 years sobriety, they would say each day is a new day, and that each day they had to work hard at their sobriety. And I also heard people speak that had 20 years, and then they were on their first year because they relapsed even after 20 years. And so there is no guarantee. And so the thing is that this is becoming such a big problem.
Yeah.
And
You were going to tell us your stats.
Oh, yes. Oh my goodness. So yes, the stats. So I had to do some research actually for my book about this. And I was just, so, just surprised at how many people are just suffering. I looked at teens and young adults suffering. First, I looked at mental illness, and then I looked at the drugs and alcohol. And so basically for mental illness, 1 in 6 adolescents aged 12 to 17 and had a major mental health issue, and 3 million had serious thoughts of suicide. And then ages 18 to 25, it was 1 in 3 in
Wow.
that age had mental illness. Yeah. And 3.8 million had thoughts of serious suicide. And then with the drugs and alcohol, it was it started as early as, it looked like 8th grade, whereas 8th grade, 17.2% were using hard drugs. Like it said
Wow.
illicit drugs, not even including marijuana. It was 17% of 8th graders, 28.5% of 10th graders, 46.5% of 12th graders.
So almost 50%.
Yeah, yeah. So it's really, and then so that's for alcohol too. So that's for drugs and alcohol, and this is other than marijuana. I don't know why they did marijuana separately, but and then they said overall high school students, 15% of high school students reported having used select illicit and injection drugs such as cocaine, inhalants, heroin, methamphetamines, hallucinogens, or ecstasy. So it's really, it's staggering statistics. There's more, but I won't keep going on. But
That's
it was eye
crazy.
opening for, it was eye opening for me, and it's just
Yeah.
really, yeah. So I did this research for the book I'm writing. So it just, I was shocked.
Well, there's look at all the singers and the celebrities, exact same scenarios.
Yeah,
And I mean Robin Williams, who you think was so happy, and
it's a,
like you can't tell from the outside. I just saw a post on TikTok yesterday, and it was a woman dancing and singing, and the person had written this was a lady with depression 2 weeks before she committed suicide. And you think she's just fine. So it's a really
yeah.
hidden disease, isn't it? Really?
I feel like it can really be hidden. I think because my son and I were so close, I really knew how he was doing. So even all the years I haven't been living with him, when I would see him, I would know. And when he would call on the phone, I would know. And
Yeah.
I mean, the last number of years, it was rare that we ever saw him, we being his brother, sister, and I, because we were all very close. He had such a close relationship with his siblings as well. And we rarely ever saw him in the last few years completely sober. He had been off drugs for like the last 6 before he passed away, but he was heavily
All
using
drugs?
alcohol.
Oh, okay. All
All
drugs. So
drugs except for alcohol. Not alcohol. He was heavily using alcohol. And when I say heavily, I mean like huge, huge amounts. Huge amounts were
oh,
found in his room
really?
after he died. Yeah, so it was really a lot of alcohol that he was using, and the only time we saw him sober was we all got together. We didn't know he was going to die, but we all saw him about 4 or 5 days before he passed away, and they all came out to visit me, and it was the first time we saw him sober,
Oh,
and he
wow.
seemed like he was happier too. So we were surprised. Now we knew he was still drinking. He just wasn't drinking when he was with us. So it was nice that we got to see him in that state, and that we all had gotten together in that state. We all ended up getting COVID, but that was okay. It was worth being able to have spent that time together shortly before he passed away.
Absolutely. What do you think people can do? Like, I mean, as a parent, you'd want to be with them 24/7 to comfort them and support them and somehow make it better, or be there like a babysitter, making sure they don't drink or don't do drugs. And I know that's impossible. That it's even
It's
impossible under your own roof, right? So what would you like? How do you support something like that?
I mean, that's it's really hard. I mean, when they're still young, and when he was still, 17, 18, 19, even 20, it was different than when he was more into his 20s. I think I did more trying to guide him, trying to not control him because I didn't have
No,
control over
won't
him.
work. Yeah.
But more, I think more trying to share the benefits, share my observations of what was happening with him, like why this wasn't working, why this was becoming unmanageable, how his drugs were becoming a problem, like, pointing these things out, like I told you, we almost lost him a few times, like, then when he was doing a little better, talking about that with him, like talking about how scary that is, how scary it was for his family, how dangerous that is, like, or if he lost a job or got kicked out of a house he was living in, like, like pointing. And I still did this even into his, up until he passed away, but I think I did these things more so, these conversations with him more often, um, in his younger years, just really, um, opening his eyes as to what's actually happening. Because I think sometimes, when he's caught up in it and caught up in using the drugs, um, then he doesn't always see the bigger picture. And
Right.
so pointing that out, um, reminding him of the medications, and I still remember, like, even when he was like 26 before he passed away, when he would call me and I could tell, based upon a symptom he'd share, and I knew exactly what medicine he was off of. And I would say, okay, what do you need to do to go get your medicine? And he would say, well, I need to schedule that appointment because I missed it for whatever reason. And I would say, okay, I want you to promise me you're going to go do that. So it still, it still is, maybe some people might see it as some control, but I'm not saying you have to do this now. I'm not lecturing him. I'm not forcing him. It's
Right.
still his decision. And I was this kind of safe, non-judgmental person for him. And I tried not to lecture him, because the thing is those things push your child away. When they feel judged every time they come to you, or they feel like every time they want to talk to you, you're not listening to them, you're actually just lecturing them and attacking them with a huge lecture, then it's going to make them come to you less and less. And so, I knew that at least it was really important to keep the lines of communication open. And he did come to me so many times when he was younger, when he was suicidal, or when there was a big problem, or, something happening with the drugs that was like, got big. And so I think that keeping the lines of communication open is part of keeping him safe, because he knows he
Yeah.
has somebody he can come to in an emergency, who's not going to judge him. So it's kind of that fine line between guiding and like showing him awareness, and but not controlling and lecturing.
And judging.
Yeah, yeah. So, because
It
I know
seems
that
so
that's
common
big.
in that age group for some reason too. 80 to say 24, 18 to 24.
I
Um,
think that it is. I mean, he had, a number of people that we called his drug friends. And I know, you know, in the later years when he put himself into treatments himself, he would tell me that he was told to, like, delete all those people from his phone, delete the drug friends so that he didn't have those contacts. Um, and even sometimes switch jobs so that they didn't know where to find him. Um, so yeah, I think even though he did it a lot himself to self-medicate, I think that there were these friends that he also did it with.
right. And so it's not always the answer for a parent to think that they could just take away the friends, which you would think. That's not really the answer either.
Wait, could you repeat that? I'm sorry.
So it's not like you could take away the friends and say they're going to be okay now. It's like it's within them. It's not the
Yeah, it's
friends,
with
right? Is what I
it's
was
within
thinking.
them. I mean, the friends are not gonna, I mean, if they so addiction is an illness as well. And so this is sometimes what people don't realize is that like addiction is an illness. And so it doesn't matter if you take the friends away and you take everything away. If they want to use, then they're going to go back to using. They have to want sobriety bad enough to stop. And that's why other people can't really make them do it. It won't last. It could maybe last for temporarily, but it's not going to last long term.
And the fight of that over your entire life, just fighting that every single day, it's just crazy. Really.
It
I
is
mean, they
really
could
crazy.
think that you know, they're healed and they're married now and have kids, and then something happens.
I think that happens a lot. I mean, I remember when he would go into the rehabs, they would have family meetings on Sundays.
Uh-oh. We lost her. Uh-oh. Let's see if we get Debbie back again. We lost her for a second, and she was going to tell us about the, oh, she'll come back in. There she is. There she is. There
Yeah, I don't know what happened. Sorry about that. Yeah, I remember when I go to the family meetings and you'd hear from people of all ages. And in the beginning, Alex was one of the youngest people there. And you'd hear from people who were kind of in and out of the rehabs, people that were older, you know, even in their 30s and 40s. And they were just kind of battling this on and off throughout their lives. And
yeah.
so I think it's difficult. And I think for Alex, as he got older, his health deteriorated more. And, you know, the more drugs he used, the more health issues and the harder it was to want to take care of himself too. Especially to take care of like his diabetes, his seizure disorder. It was not easy for him because it wasn't a priority for him at some point, you know.
And it's so hard as a parent because you're trying to do your best, and you're trying to keep them active while they're teenagers and do well in school and have sports and have some sort of interest, and you think you've got it all done, and then this happens.
Yeah. And that's kind of what the grieving of, you can grieve a loss even when they're still living, especially when mental illness and drugs take over, because, you know, he was, you know, up until age 17, he was a totally different person. You know, he did a lot of sports, you know, the soccer, the track, the cross country, a lot of friends. I mean, it was a more normal life. And so you don't always expect that that's going to happen. And, you know, you don't always expect that you're going to lose your child either. You know?
No, not to that or not to anything really. So what do you think you could, oh, it's such a hard thing because it just goes up and down to think that a parent has it fixed and then they don't. And it all seems to be some sort of addiction related. Is mental illness ever go with not? Do you know?
I don't know. I mean, I don't think we fully know. A lot of theories on what causes mental illness.
Uh-oh. It looks like she's still there. We keep losing her. And I don't know if we're having a storm today, so I'm not sure if it's us or her. But there she is. That's okay. We got you. We'll get rid of this one. There we go.
Oh, I see. So many times I think they go hand in hand.
They must.
And I think that so many times mental illness and addiction go hand in hand. And I actually think that it's more common than people realize.
Oh, for sure. And I guess they're wanting to escape. Is that, I guess, the theory around?
Yeah. I think that's what it is. I think it's an escape. I think, the more drugs he did, the more, because he probably did almost everything out there, the more of an escape it was. And he didn't have to live in this world because life was hard for him. I mean, he was suicidal a lot. Um, he was
Yeah.
depressed a lot. I mean, life was really hard for him.
Did you have to put his things together then after his passing? Like, did you have to were you the executor of trying to find everything that he had?
So yeah, as his mom, yes, there wasn't a lot of stuff though. I mean, he didn't own a lot. He hadn't worked since before COVID. I was actually, I was, and his family, my parents, his grandparents, and me were supporting him financially. So there really wasn't a lot to do, um, to that you would normally have for somebody's estate, because
Yeah.
he didn't have a car because of the seizures, so he didn't drive. And he rented a room, and so he didn't have he didn't have a lot of stuff, so it was more about his family, my other
Dealing
two
with the
kids, the grief, yeah. And we had to choose, we had to make decisions about the funeral, um and the burial. And then after the funeral, my daughter and I went and chose like the details for the memorial, for the gravestone and everything. um and so a lot of it was really just emotional
your
grieving.
own your own decisions for that fact. Because I know with a lot of older, over 18-year-olds between 18 and say 30, once they start getting, a truck loan or a car loan and their bank accounts and work, and it gets to be complicated versus somebody who doesn't have anything to start with. But
Abs-
it's
Absolutely.
hard with digital, with social media, and when they're attached to different things, you don't want that popping up years later and having that in front of your eyes when you know he's not there anymore, and why is it showing up? That type of thing.
Right.
So yeah, it's hard. It must be so hard for you as a family to understand.
Well, that's the thing, is I think we still don't really understand. We still don't have definite answers. I mean, the autopsy eventually, the medical examiner concluded that the death was due to alcoholism and diabetes. But we already knew he had alcoholism and diabetes, so we don't know. We know that he had a specific condition at the time of death called hyponatremia that can be caused. She said she sees it a lot with really heavy drinking, where you stop and your body can go through this massive, dangerous detox where, I guess she said, like your brain tissues can swell, and it can affect other organs, this hyponatremia. And so, you know, there was so much empty alcohol found, but there was no alcohol found in his system. So we think it could have been like the shock. And so his body went into shock and something shut down. And I don't know why she also thought diabetes played a role, but we don't really know. I mean, a lot of times we don't have the answers when people are living. So, I didn't actually expect that there would be a definitive answer of how he
Right,
died, but we
right.
didn't get a real, but we had to just live with that. We had to live
Versus
with
some people
with
have overdoses, right? And so it's clearly,
right,
which is a
which is
fentanyl
earlier
problem
in
right
his.
now.
Oh my gosh, yes, and it is a huge problem with fentanyl, and it's how we almost lost him in earlier years. Were overdoses, and but this was not an overdose, and so it's it's hard to know. It seems like it was something from too much alcohol in his system, and then
To
suddenly stopping
nothing.
it, and his body
Right.
just, something happened, some organ shut down, something, this hyponatremia caused something to shut down. But and we didn't even get the results for, oh gosh, the autopsy report took 16 weeks. It took
Oh,
12 to 16 weeks. It took a long time to get the autopsy.
and they don't always do it either. So um,
They
you have to
did. The police
you have to
officers said that I didn't request it. The police officer did. He said that because they found him and they didn't know, there was no evidence of outside trauma. And so he was a young, fairly young person. He was 26 and a half. And so the police officer that called me to tell me he had passed away said that they ordered it. And so I was glad that they did, because otherwise we'd have zero answers. We'd have nothing. So yeah.
Yeah, because I know with the fentanyl, that's a huge problem as well, and it's usually just diagnosed as that. But I know it's just what I mean. I don't even have words. I just don't know how you guys move on to understand. I mean, there's a purpose, there's a reason why you're on this journey that you've been given. What do you think is the reason for you on this journey?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Could you repeat the last part?
What do you think there's a reason why you're on this journey? Why all three of you are on this journey together now?
Why we're on the journey? So I mean, for me, it was such a, you never plan to lose a son or
No.
child, it's not the natural order, and it's not something I ever thought of. And after the period of initial shock, and just the initial kind of period of time, I just started going through this, like, majorly looking at life in a whole different way, and like rethinking my whole life and my whole life's purpose, and doing all this soul searching. And that had never really happened to me before, and I was aware I was doing it, and I didn't know where it was going to lead me to. And it eventually leaded me to just finding that my purpose was to help, to help other parents who have teens or young adults, especially, that are suffering from mental illness and addiction. And I mentioned I had a coaching business. I am a life and relationship coach, and I decided that I wanted to add this new direction for my business, because this is what I felt really called to do, is
Mhm.
to help these parents that are like living what I lived, and to help them in the relationship with their child too through all this. Because the one thing that I was at least so grateful for is that Alex and I had a really close, loving relationship. And so I can like cherish those memories with him, and not regret that, like, that we had a negative relationship, because we didn't. And so that was really a blessing for me. And so I really felt strongly to help
Yeah.
other people. And so also around the same time, I started writing a book. And the interesting thing is, I've never thought of myself as that I would write a book. If you had asked me, before, I would have said, no, I don't think I'm going to be writing a book anytime soon. And I literally just, I was like guided to sign up for this book writing class. And it started as a 4-day free challenge, and it was through Hay House, and I signed up, and I thought, okay, I'll sign up, but it's free. And I listened to it, and then I felt called to sign up for the membership, the 1-year membership. And then I literally I felt so strongly called to write this book, to share my journey, to share my story of the love and loss of my son, through his mental illness and addiction, and how I turned my pain into my purpose, and to be able to hopefully to offer help to parents, give him a better understanding of how to navigate the same difficulties that I was going through, and and navigate these challenges with compassion and love, so that they can have a good relationship, and then give them the inspiration to go on after suffering a tragic
Yeah.
loss. And so literally being called to write this book, the information just flows to me, almost like it's so many times it's at night and I have to jot it all down. And which worked for a while, because I wasn't sleeping for a very long I wasn't sleeping well for a while after he died. And so I wrote so much at night, and the information just flowed so fast. Like the outline just fell into place literally in a day, a massively detailed outline. And the writing is actually part of my healing journey too.
Yeah.
It's very healing to write this book, but it also aligns with my purpose.
Yes.
So it's so aligned that it's like I'm so excited about writing this book and getting it out into the world. And I'm so excited about the new direction of my coaching business, because everything feels aligned, and it feels really like this is what I was here to do. This is what I am here to do. This is, you know, it's like, another thing that I learned from Tony Robbins is he says life is not happening to us, it's happening for us. And even in a really hard situation, like a death, it's like
Hmm.
you think, how is life happening for you? This is not happening for me. um but the thing is that even though I miss him tremendously, and I wish he was still with us here on earth, um the what how it happened for me was to have me to live my purpose, so that I can go on to help other people, so that there may be other people that can have a really close relationship with their son or daughter despite these challenges, and they cannot let all the fears permeate their whole life. Because if you allow fear to take over, it will take over your life, and you won't have much of a life. Your life will be living through your son's mental illness and addiction, and that's not the life that you deserve to have.
No. And it's a surprise that it came. I mean,
Yeah.
all of a sudden they hit 18 and they change. So, yeah, it's not
Yeah.
really fair
No.
to anybody, is it? What kind of last
It's
message would you like to give people to that are listening?
Yeah, so the one thing I would say is that, because when, we never know when we have more than today. We never know when we have more than this moment right now. And so to live as if this was your last moment, like, what would you say to your loved ones? How would you show them you loved them? What would you say to them? How would you live your life? Because if you're not doing that now, you may not have another time. Nobody knows. Like I said before, there is no certainty. And
No.
so, really, just living each moment as if that is your moment, being present and knowing if this is what you have, what are you going to do with it? How are you going to live? How are you going to make sure your loved ones know how much you love them?
Yeah, and that's so important. How are your others doing? Are they
It's hard
supported?
for it's hard for them too. I mean, the nice thing is the two of them and I are so very close, and so we're there for each other. And the magical thing is that we've all gone through the same thing together, so we have that bond. Because sometimes
And
it's like,
understanding,
it's right,
right?
because we are going through it together. And so, but it's hard for them. My other son, he and Alex were not just brothers, but best friends. And so he talked to Alex every single day, and so it's really hard. But it's hard on my daughter too. So we get through it together. We have each other, thankfully, and that's a blessing that we have each other.
That's awesome. Oh, goodness gracious. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, because I don't think there is one. I mean, you have all these celebrities that you think they have all the money and they have all the resources and they have all the big people that they can reach out to. And they still can't get it right. So I don't know what the answer is, really.
It has to come from within them. I mean,
Yeah.
that's why even as a parent, you can't fix it for your child. You can
Yeah.
guide them. You
But
can
you
open
think
their
you can.
eyes. You think
You
you
think you
can, and
can.
that's where it and you don't want to blame yourself. That's the other thing is I feel like, a lot of times parents blame themselves, and unfortunately that takes you in a different direction where you're not even in the right position
Yeah.
to support and love your child in the right way that they need because you're focused on you. You're like all into like, oh my God, this is my fault. How does this look about me? This looks bad on me as a mom. And then your whole focus is you. And that's not the energy you want to be having this relationship with your child from.
Or the other ones.
Right. Or the
Right.
other ones. Yeah.
Because it's the energy everywhere. So, oh,
Yeah.
that's awesome. I could listen to you all day, Debbie. I think it's such an important topic and that we need to get out there. And I'm thankful that you are able to write this book. I'm anxious to maybe have you come back on when you finally have it launched and
I would love to.
talk more about the details of maybe specifics that you could pull out of the book and talk about, because I really think it's an important matter today that it's around us and it's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
It's
I would
crazy.
absolutely love to.
Sorry, go ahead. I think what happens is we freeze every now and then and we miss the last thing that the other person said. But well, thank you, Debbie. Thank you so, so very much for coming on our show today. I appreciate it so much. And please take a moment and subscribe to our channel and click on that bell so you get notified. I'm going to get my hand out again, and it's down here at the bottom for your subscribe button, and click on that bell so that you get notified about our upcoming videos and podcasts. I want to thank Debbie for coming on our show. It's so very grateful for your tips and your journey and your talk about it, because it's there, it's everywhere. It's your neighbor, it's your friend at school, it's everywhere. I'm sure that you saw that too. There's no gender, there's no color, there's no age, it's everywhere.
Yeah. It's everywhere.
Absolutely. So when you are thinking about that special someone, and I talk about this every time in my show, that you haven't spoken to in a while and that you love and care about so very, very much, please reach out to them and call them. We still have a phone. We still have FaceTime or Zoom, or a knock on the door would be nice, just to say, hey, are you doing okay? And I just wanted to reach out and tell you that you are on my mind. Why not, right? Why not do that? So stay tuned for our podcast and our live streams. We have great conversations with some of the most interesting and accomplished people in the world, just like Debbie here, who can give us so much information about her journey through this. I don't know what it's called right now, but it's definitely, there must be bigger numbers right now that's been going on than ever before in statistic wise. I can't imagine it getting less. I'm sure it's gotten to be more. So thank you so very much. I hope that everyone can put together their unique plan, because nobody's Superman, guys. Nobody at all, and expect the unexpected. And thank you again for all our listeners. If we are now on all podcast platforms, YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, TikTok, and we have a Facebook group community of like-minded people that would like to share their interesting and complicated estate planning. And you are welcome to join. Everyone is welcome. So thank you for sharing with us. And thank you for coming on our channel today, Debbie. I really, really appreciate it so very, very much. And I always end with Carol Burnett. I know, Debbie, you know who Carol Burnett is.
I do.
I'm so glad we had this time together just to have a laugh or sing a song. Seems we just get started, and before you know it, comes a time we have to say so long. So long, everybody. I really appreciate Debbie coming on and helping anybody out there that's listening. If you got one thing out of this, that's my goal. So thank you. Thank you so very much. Thank you, Debbie, for coming on. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me as a guest.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks, everybody. Till next time, stay safe, be kind.